Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we have John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, and he's going to be joined by the late great Gary Moore. And we're also going to be taking a look at Buddy Whittington's guitar playing as well, as he has a lead section too. They're going to be playing through so many roads, by the way. So let's get these guys up on screen and see how they get on.
So many trains to ride, so many roads, so many trains to ride. Baby, whoa, before I'll be satisfied. I was standing at the station when I heard that whistle blow. Standing at the station when I heard that whistle blow. You know, I thought it was a streetlight. Whoa, it was being old. Well, you know, I miss my baby, and I miss her lying by my side.
I'm just going to jump in here for a quick word on John and the fact that this video comes from 2008. So it meant that John would have been 75 at the time and still leaning into that lead vocal, just absolutely going for it in that chest voice. And so many singers I've mentioned in other videos about how the voice is one of the first things to go as you start to age and the vocal cords lose a bit of that flexibility, but John absolutely still going for it. And you've got to, in the blues, you can't really go up into that really light head voice sound. Sometimes John does, just to tail off the end of lines stylistically. It's great to hear that dynamic control across the whole band because it means that John's voice can now be that center of attention, and when that lead voice then drops out, as always happens in the blues, you then get another instrument that then takes on that lead role, whether it be lead guitar or any other instrument, might be keys that then comes in for a little lead solo, and then the vocals come back in. So it's cool to have that amount of control because then every instrument that needs to pop out does, and it's not overpowered, and you always come in with a really nice clean vocal, and the vocal's never wrestling with a lead guitar for the limelight. It's always one lead voice at a time. And just a quick word on Gary. I have done a few videos on Gary, so you can check those out if you want to. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I always have to mention his vibrato and the control that he has, especially at the top of bends. And this is one of those things that you tend to find if you do play yourself and you do watch other players, sometimes it's a make or break with particular players that can vibrato really well on a fretted note. But then as soon as they bend up, maybe a tone in terms of the pitch, and then apply vibrato, the personality and the feel changes because they can only play at a particular frequency. That vibrato at the top of the bends might be really fast, and then when they play on frets, they have more control. And Gary had control all over the place. It didn't matter whether he was doing a bend or whether he was just playing a straight fretted note. That vibrato was really consistent. John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, one of those bands that have had absolute top-notch talent involved the whole time, and obviously the guitarists really do take center stage. And in 1963, the band was supporting a lot of the big blues acts at the time, including John Lee Hooker in 1964. And in 1965, I think, was the turning point when Eric Clapton joined up and they started getting a lot more attention. And in 1966, they released their album called Bluesbreakers with Eric Clapton. And that was John's breakthrough because that got to number 6 here in the UK album charts. And during that time, 1966, Eric was making moves to start his own band called Cream, and he hadn't told John about this yet, and unfortunately John found out, so it was a little bit embarrassing for Eric, and Eric was only involved with the Bluesbreakers for 65 and 66, and after that time, John then called on the services again of Peter Green, who had been involved earlier. So from 66 onwards, it was then Peter Green who took over the lead guitar duties. And interestingly, Peter Green also, when he rejoined with the band, was only there for about a year because he then started Fleetwood Mac after that, so his own band, he went off. And then after that, Mick Taylor got involved for the next couple of years, but I don't want to get too much into the history of the band because I want to get into the performance aspects of this video. So let's get back into this and wait for these two lead sections that we have from Buddy and Gary.
I miss her lying by my side. You know, she gave me the kind of love that always kept me satisfied.
Okay, so let's jump in just to have a word about that lead section that Buddy lays down, because the first time that he starts playing, you can tell it's a free-form jam that's going on here, obviously with the constraints of so many rows in terms of the vocals, but that free-form blues, because John looks over and it's obvious that they haven't predetermined who's going to come in first with the lead, so just waiting for those bars to finish, it means that Gary and Buddy then work it out between them and Buddy goes first. And we've got a really clean tone here as well, and the reason that Buddy can get away with that is because of his technique and the way that he can express with every note on the guitar, throwing the runs together as well, the control of vibrato, but not only that, slides and throwing the runs together with the pick, alternate picking. We haven't got a whole load of fast alternate picked runs here, but look out for as well, I think it's about 412 or 413 in the video, where he swaps to that pure fingerstyle and he just palms that plectrum in his hand. So have a little look out for that, because it's a great contrast to have the ability to do that and make that switch so quickly, and then he gets back into that more aggressive sound of the pick when he wants it. And look out for that subtle control and dynamic change that we have within the solo. It comes in at about 4 minutes and 11 seconds, where Buddy then turns a little bit more into that overdrive, and towards the end of the solo the band start to open up a little bit, but then at the end they just close it down right at the end of the solo. So we've had that journey from Buddy starting in that really low dynamic place all the way to the top of the mountain, and now we've cut off straight away back down to the bottom again, where Gary can now take us on his journey. And Gary's playing a Les Paul here, so it's going to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of the sound. We're probably going to open up a lot more with the rest of the band to complement that guitar sound that Gary will have. And Gary's got great dynamic control as well, so to begin with he'll start just to roll off a little bit of that volume, play within this dynamic range that we've got currently, but then when he starts to open up, the rest of the band will open up with him. And this is what happens with great bands, is that when you've got a lead guitarist who's starting to push the sound and open up with their playing, the rest of the band do exactly the same thing on their instruments. Because if they didn't, it would just sound a bit weird with somebody going for it at the front of the stage on lead guitar and then the rest of the band playing really quietly. But with a mind on those dynamics, let's have a look at how it plays out and also Gary's lead section. I'm just going to jump in here. Gary's solo there is such a great contrast to the solo that we had previously from Buddy, because Gary really starts to push in a little bit of speed and technique, and also opening up the taps like I mentioned dynamically. You can hear the way that the whole band open up with Gary once he starts leaning into that sound. And the other thing that I loved about Gary and the way that he played was he really threw caution to the wind and pushed his playing to the limit. He never went off the edge of that cliff, like I mentioned, that some players tend to lose their way if they push too much. But Gary, it was almost like the more he pushed, the better he got. And sometimes he just strikes open strings, and it's just part of the expression. And a lot of people who are really into tabs and also maybe writing it all down musically, they'll have a real difficult job with Gary and his playing because of the fact that he throws in so much expression that fits the lead playing, but when you write it down, it might not make sense just hitting open strings between phrases. But because Gary played in that way and really threw caution to the wind, it just worked really well. And when I mentioned about the band matching the dynamic feel and expression of the lead voice, whether it be Buddy's lead guitar or Gary's lead guitar, or even John on the keys, that is the beauty and the subtlety of the Bluesbreakers, because they have that ability to match whoever they're playing with, just give you that perfect backing. And as an instrumentalist, you can go wherever you want to, and all of those other players in the background are going to go on that journey with you and absolutely back you up, so that whatever you're playing, it's never going to sound out of place because you've got that top quality band backing you. And that is what the Bluesbreakers are all about. And there's a reason why John Mayall has 37 studio albums, and also, by the way, Nobody Told Me in 2019, an album for this year. So absolutely still going. There's a reason that it has that longevity. It's because of the quality of musicianship. But John very much has his quality bar set at a very particular height, and anything below that just doesn't wash. And that's the reason that 60 and 70 years in the industry, you get top quality talent with the Bluesbreakers, like I mentioned earlier with Eric Clapton and Peter Green and Mick Taylor as well. John McVie was in there on bass, and then he came back in the 80s too. And Walter Trout as well, another guitarist you can find on this channel if you want to watch his playing. I haven't got time to get through the whole list of players. You'll have to go to Wikipedia to look that up, because there's been so many top level players with the Bluesbreakers and John. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have a chance to finish this video off. There's only about a minute to go, so you guys can check out the whole video if you want to. The link's going to be in the description below as always. Thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!